Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel World Conflict Monitor. Please subscribe and like my videos because today we are going into one of the most dramatic developments of the year, a massive escalation that has caught the eyes of every analyst, every citizen, and every government official. Following the war, the news is that Ukraine has launched 93 drone strikes on Russia, creating massive explosions and shaking the already fragile balance of this war. What we will do in this review is take apart the news as if it were a product in front of us. We will look at the exterior, what is seen immediately by the world, the interior, what lies beneath the surface and makes this event complex, the performance, how effective and impactful these drone attacks were, the safety features, or in other words, the protective measures and risks, the unique selling points, meaning why this strike is different from previous escalations, the price, which refers to the cost both financially, strategically, and in human terms, and finally we will come to a conclusion about what this all really means for the war, for Ukraine, for Russia, and for the rest of us watching. On the exterior, the picture is dramatic, bold, and almost cinematic. 93 drones are not a symbolic gesture. It is a wave, an offensive wave that visually signals to Russia, to NATO, and to the global community that Ukraine has both the intent and the capability to extend the war beyond its own borders. When analysts describe the strikes, they often talk about the sound, the footage, the rising fireballs, and the reports of explosions rocking multiple regions across Russian territory. This exterior perspective is what hits the headlines, what is captured on social media in short videos, what ordinary people witness as blasts in the night sky. It is the surface layer, but also the most powerful for shaping perception. For Russia, the exterior means humiliation because it shows vulnerability in cities and bases thought to be secure. For Ukraine, the exterior is a powerful image of resistance, resilience, and defiance, showing its ability to strike far beyond the frontline trenches and into the symbolic heart of its adversary. For the wider world, this exterior gives the impression of momentum shifting, of Ukraine not just defending but pushing back with technology and daring. When we move to the interior, things become far more complex and much deeper. This is the paragraph that matters most, because inside this story lies the strategic architecture of modern warfare. At the interior level, the strikes are not just about explosions, but about infrastructure, supply lines, morale, and the invisible battle for psychological dominance. Ukraine has been developing its drone program for months with the support of Western technology, engineers, and a domestic innovation drive that has become one of the most significant developments of the war. Drones are cheaper, lighter, and less risky than traditional aircraft, and they allow a weaker country to project power into the territory of a larger adversary. The interior also includes the targets, oil depots, military installations, radar sites, ammunition warehouses, and sometimes even symbolic urban centers. Each strike weakens the logistical chain of the Russian war machine. It forces Moscow to spread out its defenses, spend more on air defense systems, and confront a type of warfare that is asymmetric in nature. Internally, Ukraine is sending a message to its citizens: we are not only surviving, we are striking back, we are innovating, and we will not allow the aggressor to feel safe on their own soil. This boosts morale domestically and ensures that the sacrifices of the Ukrainian people feel purposeful. On the Russian interior, the consequences are disruptive and destabilizing. Ordinary Russians are now waking up to the sound of air raid sirens, something they never expected when the war began. The interior impact is the erosion of the social contract between the Russian state and its people, because the war is no longer something distant, it is at their doorstep, in their skies, and in their lives. The psychological interior is therefore as explosive as the physical blasts, destabilizing confidence in leadership and security. For the West, the interior message is also critical. It demonstrates that support for Ukraine is not wasted, that investment in drones and new technology is paying off, and that Russia can be pressured not only at the front lines, but deep in its territory. This is why the interior of this story is so important. It is not only explosions, but a restructuring of how the war itself is understood, how modern drone warfare can transform the balance of power, and how resilience and innovation can challenge sheer size and strength. Performance is the next area we need to evaluate, and here we talk about effectiveness. Did the drones succeed? Were the targets hit? Was the message delivered? Performance is measured in both tactical and strategic terms. Tactically, Ukraine managed to launch nearly 100 drones in a coordinated wave, which already demonstrates logistical planning, technological capability, and intelligence gathering. Many of the drones penetrated Russian defenses, reaching their targets and triggering large explosions. This suggests that Russian air defenses, while extensive, are still porous and cannot intercept every threat. In terms of performance, the strikes delivered shock, disruption, and damage, which is precisely their purpose. Strategically, performance is about shifting the perception of the war. For Ukraine, the performance is high because they have shown endurance and offensive capacity. For Russia, the performance of their defense systems is questionable. Billions of dollars are invested in S-400s, radars, and anti-aircraft systems, yet small drones still break through. Performance also matters in terms of cost-effectiveness. Ukraine's drones are relatively cheap compared to the damage they cause or the defense systems they exhaust. That cost-performance ratio is favorable for Kiev and concerning for Moscow. Safety features may sound like an odd way to describe a war strike, but in this review context, it means the protective measures each side employs to minimize damage and risk. For Ukraine, the safety feature is distance. Drones allow them to strike without risking pilots or high-value aircraft. It also allows them to maintain plausible deniability in some cases because drones are smaller, harder to trace, and sometimes even confused with accidents by the initial Russian media reports. For Russia, safety features are supposed to be the air defense systems, the sirens, the shelters, and the rapid response units. But what these strikes expose is that the safety features are either insufficient or overstretched. Russian civilians now have to learn safety procedures, understand where to hide, and confront the reality that they are part of the battlefield. On the global stage, safety features also mean escalation control. Ukraine must calibrate its strikes to avoid direct attacks on Moscow's political symbols that could trigger disproportionate retaliation. The safety net here is diplomacy, communication with Western allies, and maintaining the narrative that these strikes are defensive in nature, aimed at reducing Russia's ability to wage war. Unique selling points of these strikes are what make them different from earlier episodes. The first unique point is scale. 93 drones in a single operation is unprecedented and signals a new level of organization and capability. The second is the symbolism. These strikes come at a moment when international attention was shifting, and they bring Ukraine back into the global spotlight with a display of strength. The third unique feature is the psychological reach. Unlike artillery battles or frontline skirmishes, these drones touch cities hundreds of kilometers away, redefining the geography of the war. Another unique selling point is technological innovation. Ukraine is not only defending itself, but creating a new model of warfare that other nations are studying closely. Finally, the strikes are unique because of the balance they strike between cost and impact. Each drone may cost a fraction of a missile, yet the consequences are disproportionately large, showing how 21st century warfare is evolving. When we talk about price, we must expand the meaning beyond money. Financially, Ukraine is investing in a drone program that requires resources, research, and support from Western partners. Each strike costs thousands, but the return in terms of global attention and strategic pressure is enormous. For Russia, the price is measured in damaged infrastructure, weakened logistics, shaken morale, and expensive intercepts. Every Russian missile fired at a drone is a missile not used at the front, and every destroyed oil depot costs millions. But the deeper price is human. Each explosion risks lives, whether soldiers guarding a depot or civilians living nearby. War is never cheap, and the price is paid in trauma, in fear, in uncertainty. For the international community, the price is the risk of escalation. If Russia decides to retaliate more fiercely, the conflict could widen, and the costs could spread across borders. Price is therefore not just about money, but about risk, sacrifice, and the toll that this war continues to extract from all sides. In conclusion, this wave of 93 drones is more than just a headline. It is a turning point, a demonstration, a test, and a signal all in one. On the exterior, it is fire and explosions, shocking visuals that redefine how people see the war. On the interior, it is the architecture of strategy, innovation, and psychology that makes this event significant. In performance, it shows effectiveness and cost efficiency. In safety features, it exposes weaknesses and highlights the importance of distance warfare. In unique selling points, it showcases scale, innovation, and psychological reach. In price, it reveals the costly balance of modern conflict, both financially and humanly. Together, these dimensions show us that this is not just another battle, but a marker of how the war is evolving, and how the future of warfare itself might look. The conclusion is sobering. Ukraine has found a way to strike hard with limited resources. Russia has been forced to confront vulnerabilities on its own soil, and the world has been reminded that this conflict is far from over. For viewers, the takeaway is clear: stay informed, stay critical, and continue to watch how these events shape the broader geopolitical landscape. The war is no longer confined to front lines. It is spreading into the skies, into cities, into minds. And as long as that is true, the World Conflict Monitor will be here to break it down for you.